Dude, that debate last night was embarrassing. Embarrassing. And it's interesting because now so many mainstream media pundits are now echoing the same sentiment that a lot of us in independent media have been saying. Actually, I've been saying this since 2020 when Joe Biden was participating in the Democrat debates. Didn't have my show then, though. I talked about that on social media a lot. They are now admitting that Joe Biden is having some type of cognitive decline, and that did not look well. There are also mainstream media pundits saying that Joe Biden should now step aside and let someone else step in. You know, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. There are a couple moments from that debate that I do want to highlight. Let's start with Donald Trump. Let's bring this up. The black job comment. This is one that I feel if there was ever a moment that Joe Biden should have hit back at Donald Trump, it was this moment. And he didn't. He totally missed it because he was totally unaware. This is the one that is echoing all across the United States. Listen to it.
As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you.
So black jobs and Hispanic jobs. He said black jobs twice. What is a black job? Because I'm still trying to figure this one out. What is a black job? What are you talking about? Black people do all different types of jobs. So what is a black job? Anybody in the chat know? Anybody? Leroy said Trump is using all the talking points he sees online. It's just, what is the black job? We don't know. Hector says, what's a black job? I don't get it. I don't know. You don't know? I don't know. Right? What is noticeable, though, is that Biden didn't even push back on that. Easy win for Biden would have been to say, well, excuse me, what is a black job? Didn't even catch it. Didn't even put back because he doesn't know where he's at. Biden has no idea what's going on. If you would have seen him when he walked out onto the stage to get to the podium, Joe Biden had no idea what was going on. It was very clear. Very clear. Black job. Missed that one. That was an easy layup. People on social media didn't miss it, though. I don't know if you guys were on social media, if you were watching like Twitter last night, but that was probably one of the more trending statements from the debate last night. People on Twitter were just like, psh. Did not like that at all. Then there was this moment where it's very clear that Joe Biden was having difficulty. Very clear. Watch this.
Every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat every.
So very obvious there. Very obvious. And this isn't the first time that we've seen Joe Biden speak this way. The problem is CNN and MSNBC have been running cover for Joe Biden all this time. Every time those of us that are in independent media said Joe Biden is experiencing cognitive decline. Those of you watching, if you've ever had a family member that has gone through this, that have gone through dementia or experienced some type of cognitive decline in their life, if you're watching and you've worked in healthcare services and you've worked with an elderly community where some of the patients may have also had dementia, or experienced cognitive decline, you know what it looks like. You know it when you see it. And what I assume may have happened, whatever they have been given Joe Biden, and I say this because he was at a rally in North Carolina today, totally different person, totally different than what you saw in this debate. And people are saying, we told you it was just one bad night. Nah, I think the drugs didn't wear off yet. I think the drugs did not wear off yet. Okay, that's what I think happened. So I think what happened here with Joe Biden, the debate was in the evening. I think by that time, whatever they've been giving him probably wore off. They said he had a cold. Colds don't make you forget things. Colds don't make you incoherent. So it was embarrassing for Joe Biden. Now let's get to Israel and Gaza, which I feel like they did not spend enough time on last night. You literally have a genocide taking place in Gaza. And they took this opportunity to spend time talking about playing golf instead of focusing on the fact that you literally have thousands of children that have been killed. The commentators, Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, did not spend much time on that issue. And I think you all know why. But since we're on the issue, for the people who continued to tell me that Donald Trump said he would end it, he would just end what's happening in Gaza. Let me show you what he meant by ending it, which is what I've tried to tell people over and over again.
Is the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
So here we go again, right? So there's Donald Trump telling you folks that he wants them to finish the job. Same thing that Nikki Haley said. Hasn't he already elected or selected her to be a part of his administration? Hasn't Trump already selected her to be a part of his? So think about this, guys. Stop saying Donald Trump is anti-war. I don't even know who started that, but stop it. He's not anti-war. So you got two genocidal candidates on the damn stage. Terrible. To the point that it led to this. Really, this is what they're wasting their time discussing. They're talking about golf. Embarrassing.
President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what you're. Anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8. But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to.
Let's not act like children.
And the moderators let this go on. Like they just, this had nothing to do with the questions that were asked. Now, here's the thing. We all know that Biden did a horrible job, which is what I predicted would happen. But I'm going to keep it real with you. And I don't know if anyone else has said this. Trump wasn't at his best either. He wasn't as horrible as Joe Biden, but Donald Trump was stronger in previous debates. If you go back and you watch previous debate that he had with Joe Biden, if you go back and you watch the debates that he had with Hillary Clinton in 2016, Donald Trump wasn't at his best either. You have two genocidal old dudes running for president. And the entire time that I was watching this last night, I said to myself, I only imagine what it would have been like if the other candidates would have been on that stage. Whether you agree with them or not, whether Cornel West, Claudia De La Cruz, Jill Stein, RFK, if all of them would have been on that stage, Think about how different that debate could have been. Any one of those people that I just named for you could have mopped the floor with Biden and Trump, because there were a number of lies that were told last night during the debate, and the moderators did not fact check anything. There was no fact checking. Donald Trump was just lying out his mouth over and over and over again, not answering the questions that he was asked. Biden was also telling lies. Nobody fact checked either one of them. Embarrassing for CNN. But I'm going to tell you why I think they did this debate. This was CNN's way, in my opinion, of sending a message to the Democratic Party that they need to replace Joe Biden. That's why I feel like they wanted to do this debate. Remember, these debates have been on C-SPAN. I think they said the next one in September is going to be on ABC News. But I think these debates need to be handed back over to the League of Women Voters. CNN shouldn't be able to have exclusive rights to a debate, and the moderator's not even fact checking. It needs to go back to the League of Women Voters and let them handle all of this. But I think they did it to send a strong message to the Democratic Party that you need to replace Joe Biden. That's just what I think. But the lies. So Trump told a number of lies over and over. And I've seen multiple people on social media saying, oh, I'd rather just vote for the guy that's a little senile instead of voting for the guy who's the liar. Joe Biden told lies too. And here are some of them.
Some of them. He said he's the only president in a while who didn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world. Troops have, of course, died on his watch. He said he's put in a $15 per shot cap on insulin and Medicare. It's a $35 a month cap. He said it's a $200 cap on overall drug spending in Medicare. It's $2,000 a year. He said the border now has fewer crossings than when Trump was in office. That's generally not true. He said, or at least.
So look at this. So I think why some people may have missed Joe Biden's lies is because a lot of the things that Joe Biden lied about have to deal with numbers, right? So if you're not heavily following this, like when legislation is passed and things like that, this may just go over your head. You may not have realized that Joe Biden was lying about these things. However, this one right here is the big one. Border now has fewer crossings than when Trump was in office. I think we all know that is a blatant lie. And so it was just weird to me when I looked at social media and all these people saying Biden's telling the truth, so I'd rather vote for him. What? They were both lying. They're both liars. It just is. It just is what it is.
He strongly suggested unemployment was at 15% when he took office. It was actually 6.4. He said Trump wants to get rid of Social Security. Trump doesn't. He said billionaires pay 8.2% in taxes. It's much higher. He said Trump told Americans to inject bleach amid COVID. We know Trump made foolish comments about scientists studying disinfectant injection, but didn't frame it as advice to people. And Biden said the Border Patrol endorsed him. No, its union supported the border bill he supported, never endorsed him himself.
I actually think, if I remember correctly, I think I do remember Trump saying that, making that statement about the bleach. So I don't even know if he has all his facts straight. So there's that. There is that. So of course, like after that, and even during the commercial breaks, MSNBC and CNN commentators were melting down. And just like that, they turned on Joe Biden. I told you I thought this was a setup from the very beginning. CNN set this up. Let me send a message to let them know they need to pop this guy out and put somebody else back in. Joy Reid was the first person that I saw respond about the debate not favorably of Biden's performance. Listen to this.
I, too, was on the phone throughout much of the debate with Obama world people, with Democrats, with people who are political operatives, with campaign operatives. My phone really never stopped buzzing throughout. And the universal reaction was somewhere approaching panic. The people who were texting with me were very concerned about President Biden seeming extremely feeble, seeming extremely weak. And you know, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. President Biden had one job tonight, and it was one primary job, And yes, it was to litigate Donald Trump's, criminality and all of those things. But he had to settle his own party. Mm-hmm. He needed to settle Democrats. Democrats, they always talk about Democrats are bedwetters and Democrats are always panicking. Yes, Democrats are always panicking. They're always scared, right? They're always thinking they're going to lose. Like Democrats are very pessimistic. This is just neurotic. Who they are. They're neurotic. But Joe Biden's job was to reassure them tonight. His job was to calm his party, to make them feel that, yes, I can do this. I have 4 more years in me. I have the ability and the stamina and the strength to do 4 more years. He did not do that. He did the opposite of that. He made them more panicked. Mm-hmm. The people who were texting me were even more panicked. They actually expected it to be better than it was. And now they're in I won't say a full-fledged panic, but it's getting there.
And are people that you're talking to who are expressing these concerns, are these people who are involved in Democratic politics, or yes. Are these liberals watching TV?
These are not liberals watching TV. These are campaign people. These are.
You guys hear this? So it's embarrassing, right? It's embarrassing for them. And I'm just going to say this and just keep it as nice and sweet as I can. All of you that are commentators at MSNBC and CNN, you owe independent media a huge apology, because for years we have been telling people that Joe Biden is experiencing cognitive decline. And every time those criticisms were aimed towards Joe Biden, you guys came in every time to run cover for him and defend him. Now, why did they do that? Because that's what they were paid to do. See, now they had already gotten the memo during the debate. It's okay to go ahead and, it's okay to go ahead and shame Biden. It's okay to critique him now, to be critical of it. But that's what they were paid to do. But you guys owe independent media a huge apology. And honestly, not even just independent media. I'm talking about some of the people that you interviewed that are part of mainstream media. Stephen A., sports commentator from ESPN, has come on to MSNBC and CNN how many times and told you, get Joe Biden out? Joe Biden ain't up for the job. Hasn't he said this? Charlemagne the God, who I've been heavily critical of, because at the end of the day, he still told you he's going to vote for the Democratic Party. But Charlemagne the God, how many times, how many TV shows, how many news programs has he been on the past year and a half telling people that Joe Biden ain't it? How many times? So you guys owe all of us an apology. And if you guys would have been paying attention in 2020 in the Democrat primary debates, a lot of people back then were saying, Joe Biden seems like he's losing it. He's not with it. This guy stood up there and talked about some dude named Corn Pop, which we ain't never heard of, and was totally irrelevant to the conversation. And the media defended him every time. You guys defended him. So what you got last night was karma. Karma, karma, karma.
People who are either Democratic operatives. These are people who were former, sort of Obama world administration people. These are people who are in the business. Okay. So the civilians are also panicking. They're also texting me, but I was trying to kind of ignore the civilians and really talk to the campaign folks. People are, they're worried, and there is, it's not a full drumbeat yet, but there is talk of, look, here's the thing. I know a lot of politicians. I just happen to know a lot of them at a lot of levels. They all.
No, you don't just happen to know a lot of politicians. You don't just happen to know them. You know them because of your job. I just happen to know them.
Believe that they have a unique ability to run the race that they passionately want to run. And I know for a fact that Joe Biden passionately believes that he is the only person who can beat Donald Trump. And he has evidence of it because he did it before. Right. He knows that he has certain demographic strengths that Donald Trump cannot counter. He is the real working class white guy that's actually Donald Trump's base. So he knows how to talk to them. He believes that he is the only person that can do it. The problem is, after tonight, his party doesn't believe that.
Some of us have been saying this for quite some time. And honestly, it wasn't just last night. There are people who are Democrats who are still part of the Democratic Party that have been expressing their concerns about Joe Biden's ability to, have another term. But she wasn't alone. Even Chuck Todd. Glenn Greenwald said things were so bad for Biden that even his hardest core media partisans have to admit it. Listen to this. This is Chuck Todd.
You know, one of the things was, would either candidate look like the caricature that the other campaign has been trying to paint of him? And at the end of the day, Joe Biden looks like the caricature that conservative media has been painting. And there were no clips tonight, right? This was, you saw it before your eyes. Look, I don't want to just tell you what I think here, Tom. I've been talking to a lot of leaders in the Democratic Party, electeds, coalition leaders. There's a full-on panic about this performance. Not like, oh, this is recoverable. It is more of a, okay, he's got to step aside. There's a lot of that chatter. This is about as bad of a performance in order to that Biden could have delivered if his goal was to try to sort of calm the waters among Democrats. I mean, look, there was, you know, one of the things.
So yeah, there's Chuck Todd making it very loud and clear. Yikes. Like, what do we do? What do we do? Even on CNN, you'll see it as well.
Right now, as we speak, there is a deep, a wide, and a very aggressive panic in the Democratic Party. It started minutes into the debate, and it continues right now. It involves party strategists, it involves elected officials, it involves fundraisers. And they're having conversations about the president's performance, which they think was dismal, which they think will hurt other people down the party in the ticket, and they're having conversations about what they should do about it. Some of those conversations include, should we go to the White House and ask the president to step aside? Other of the conversations are about, should prominent Democrats go public with that call? Because they feel this debate was so terrible. They do say in moments in the debate later, the president got better and got his footing, but then at the end, even his closing statement was a little halting. The contrast between the two candidates. Let me be clear. None of them, and a lot of Republicans, don't think Donald Trump had a great night. Donald Trump broke the fact check machine more than I can count tonight. That will be on the record as we go forward. He refused to answer some very specific and direct questions about his conduct, about January 6th and what all. So that will be dealt with out there. And sometimes there's a parallel universe between the political elites and the American people. It'd be nice to see what the voters say. But I can tell you, it started minutes in. It started with the first couple of answers, and it has continued throughout the night from a, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, to what do we do about this? And it involves very senior people in the Democratic Party, including elected officials, saying we have a problem.
And just to co-sign what John is saying, I mean, the panic that I am hearing from Democrats is not like anything that I have heard in this campaign so far. And a lot of it has to do with, first of all, there was a deep frustration about Trump's lies. I mean, he lied a lot tonight. But the problem for Biden was that Trump was able to take sometimes incredible falsehoods and turn them into some kind of argument, whereas Biden's answers were, in a lot of cases, not coherent, deeply problematic, that he was not able to take pretty straightforward answers and answer them to the American public. And then also at some points, bringing things up that teed up Trump attacks. So
what's interesting, this is coming from Abby Phillips, because Charlemagne sat there to your face and told you Joe Biden needs to go because he is not with it. You can see him falling apart on camera, whether it's a press conference or whatever, right? Stephen A. Smith sat there and told you, Abby, to your face that Biden needs to go. So it's just like, they all act like they're surprised now. But again, that's what they're paid to do. So we always got to bring it back to the money, right? That's what they're paid to do. And this one is probably my favorite, Morning Joe, because they, out of all the people who ran cover for Joe Biden the most, it has to be Morning Joe. It's got to be Mika and Joe, because Mika and Joe, they were so far up Joe Biden's ass. You couldn't even see them if you went into surgery, okay? That's how far up they were up his ass. They constantly continued to defend and run cover for Joe Biden. And now here we are with them talking like this.
I think we should begin with Joe, Willie, and me and get your reflections on the debate last night.
Well, I think I should start by saying, without any apologies, that I love Joe Biden and Jill, and I will gladly debate anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere.
Love is not a qualification. Okay? Because I heard Van Jones. Oh, everybody loved this guy all of a sudden. Van Jones, like, I love that man. Okay? I love that man. Joe's like, I love Biden. I just do. Love is not a qualification, fam. You have to be able to actually do the job. Everybody loves him all of a sudden now. I love that guy, man.
Over the issue of whether Joe Biden has been the most effective president in passing bipartisan legislation, in expanding NATO, and responding to the rising threat coming from China by flexing America's strength around China.
What threat coming from China? See, they just gaslight. You know who's the threat? We're the threat. It's not China. It's not Russia. You know who's the threat to the world? The United States government. The military-industrial complex. We are the threat. We're the ones that overthrow leaders in other countries. We're the ones that steal resources from other countries. We're the ones that slaughter people in other countries. We are the threat. I don't see China coming across the pond to try to kill us. We're the terror. We're the ones that ruin it for everybody else. Ay.
By having the strongest economy in the world, bar none, the strongest economy actually relative to the rest of the world.
He really pulling here. He really reaching. He's just going to pretend like inflation is not an issue because it's not an issue to Mika and Joe, because Mika and Joe live in a penthouse apartment. Okay? It's not an issue to Mika and Joe because they got penthouse apartments. They got money. Mika come from money and privilege. Joe come from money and privilege.
In 50, 60, 70 years, the strongest dollar in half a century. The strongest military relative to the rest of the world, I would argue, and many others would argue.
That's not a selling point, fam. People who are out there protesting in support for the Palestinian people, that is not going to be a selling point, fam.
Since 1945, I think his presidency has been an unqualified success. If, however, you believe, as do I, and as do so many people who watch this program and who fear just how dark of a place a second Donald Trump term will take America, then I think it's critical that we ask the same questions about this man I love, respect, and whose public service in saving this country from Donald Trump over the last 3.5 years I honor and always will. I think we have to ask the same questions of him that we have asked of Donald Trump since 2016, and that is, if he were CEO and he turned in a performance like that, would any corporation in America, any Fortune 500 corporation in America, keep him on as CEO?
No. This is why I say love is not a qualification. The thing is, love doesn't keep you employed. No. But a lot of this, again, I point to the media because let's all remember, I didn't support Dean Phillips or Marianne Williamson. Let me make that clear because some people like to lie. I didn't support Dean Phillips or Marianne Williamson. I don't support anybody running the two-party system. That being said, let's all remember, there were other people that were running in the Democratic Party. That includes RFK Jr. too, if we go way back before he split, that were running in the Democratic Party. And I tend to remember Dean Phillips specifically saying that I think that Joe Biden is too old for another term. He was very clear about that. And people like Mika and Joe and the rest of mainstream media were very much against anybody primarying Joe Biden. And here we are. And here we are. Because the reality is, if there would have been a primary debate, I think a lot of people would have chosen those other candidates instead of Joe Biden. No, but you guys tried to hide him and prevent that from happening so that people would not see Joe Biden's performance. They wouldn't see him struggle. And here we are. So there's that. There's that. There's been a number of times where people have told you on your show that Joe Biden is not up for the task for a second term. Now, I don't know who's been running this damn country, but it sure as hell hasn't been Joe Biden. I don't know. Maybe it's been Obama. He still seems to be very vocal, always around. Hasn't been Joe, though. Has not been Joe. We'll go on a little bit more here.
If this were Donald Trump, time and time again, we talked about the Goldwater. Where's the Barry Goldwater? To walk over and tell Richard Nixon it was over, to tell Donald Trump it was over. And now the question is, do Democrats need to do the same thing of Joe Biden? I mean, these are hard questions, but the fact is, friends, failure is just not an option. In 2024, failure is not an option. So who I love, who I respect, who I revere for their work and their duty to service over their lifetime really is not relevant. It's not relevant for any of us. It's not relevant for Democratic leaders. It's not relevant for anyone. The question is, we know Joe Biden can govern. Mm-hmm. And again, I'll debate that issue with anyone and I will win. I will destroy anybody that wants to debate Joe Biden's record over the past 3.5 years.
See, he's trying to get his emotions are getting involved. He's getting too emotional. You getting your emotions involved because of your love for this man, all this love that you have for Joe Biden.
He can run the White House. He can run the country effectively. Despite.
Dude, he can barely talk. He's having difficulty speaking. He's having difficulty walking. He's trying to sit down midair in a chair that doesn't even exist. This is the man that has his finger on the nukes, fam. Look how many foreign conflicts we've had since Joe Biden has entered office. Then you got the problem with Kamala Harris, and I'll get to that in a second.
Despite the barrage of lies that constantly come at him, like Donald Trump's lies last night, but can he run for president in 2024? Donald Trump lied over and over and over and.
Yes, and so did Joe Biden. See, they're not telling you that. They're not telling you the lies that Joe Biden told. Still trying to cover for Joe.
Over again. And Joe Biden couldn't respond to any of those lies. In fact, as the New York Times said, he spent much of the night with his mouth agape and his eyes darting back and forth. He couldn't fact check anything Donald Trump said. And not only that, he missed one layup after another after another. He couldn't respond effectively to Donald Trump trying to overthrow American democracy on January 6th. He couldn't respond effectively to Donald Trump's continued stream of lies about his own record. And he couldn't even respond effectively on the issue of abortion, where for some reason he darted wildly to the issue of immigration. And on immigration, as I said yesterday morning, any Democrat that can't turn to their Republican opponent and blast them for killing the strongest, toughest border bill in the history of America, drafted by a right-wing senator from Oklahoma, may not be up to the job. And so That's the question. I know people are waiting and say, oh, and David Plouffe, I have such great respect for David Plouffe. He said we need to wait 3 or 4 days because Donald Trump really turned off swing voters in a lot of focus groups once they saw him again. And
Joe Biden turned off swing voters too. It's a mess. Let me tell you who I think it really helped. Because even Nicole Wallace couldn't lie her way through that debate and cover for Joe Biden as well. And that's a poll question I have there. Who do you think the debate helped? If I were to name a specific person, that debate probably just helped RFK Jr. And I don't support RFK Jr. I think his so-called reparations platform, number one, is not reparations and doesn't include cash reparations and includes all these other groups in his bullshit. And his policy on Israel is disgusting. So I don't support RFK Jr., but RFK Jr. had his own debate last night. Over 6 million views. Now, does that mean that those 6 million people are going to come out and support and vote for RFK? No, not necessarily. But that does show you still that he was able to garner that many viewers, 6 million views by himself. That debate last night, when I watched it, I said, you know what this does? All this does is reassure people what a lot of people have been feeling, that both Biden and Trump suck. And it actually could help people like RFK, Dr. West, Jill Stein, Claudia De La Cruz. It actually could help them. But listen to what they said here on the panel. This is funny too.
I was on the phones for some of it after that became clear, and there is a conversation happening inside Biden's circle, and certainly a much more frank conversation happening inside the Democratic coalition. And I think there will be stories of a lot of concern about the performance tonight. And I think when you
say conversations happening, what do you mean?
I think people are talking. I think the conversations range from whether he should be in this race tomorrow morning to what was wrong with him. I mean, he has a cold that came out. Our own Kelly O'Donnell reported that a few minutes in, but exactly what
Negative
you articulated.
COVID test, but a cold.
Right. So those things were, I mean, the reason reporters were reporting on the cold was because of what you articulated. I mean, the voice was very, very soft. It wasn't the Joe Biden performance of the State of the Union. No. It wasn't seizing a moment to get on the offensive on immigration. It wasn't Joe Biden on the offensive on January 6th. It wasn't Joe Biden on the offensive on abortion, his two, shining issues. It was exactly what Chris Hayes predicted. It was Trump moderating not just tonally, but sounding less crazy as he lied as often as he breathed. The debate moderators did not fact check one thing, but they did give Joe Biden time to fact check, and he didn't do much of that either. It is not our job to tell people what to see and hear, but I think what I heard from a Biden aide is we can't necessarily spin too much what people did see and hear.
So, I mean, you can't hide it. I did notice something else with that debate. I noticed when they went to the first commercial break, I noticed their numbers dropped significantly. When they did that first commercial break, their numbers dropped significantly on CNN. So, but of course, someone had to lie. And that was Kamala Harris. Someone had to come in and lie about Biden's performance. Listen to this.
I think a lot of people who are fans and supporters of President Biden, or who are Democrats, or who are just worried about the prospect of Donald Trump returning to the presidency, feel like this was not a strong performance tonight from President Biden. I want to hear your assessment and how you respond to those critics.
Well, it was a slow start. There's no question about that. But I thought it was a strong finish, and in particular because what we know is that when you look at the two sides of the ledger, what we had in Joe Biden is someone who wanted to have a debate based on facts, based on truth. And in Donald Trump, we had what we have come to expect, which is someone who is going to push lies and distract from the reality of the damage he has created and continues to create in our country.
All right, let's go ahead and pause. Do you think that Joe Biden had a strong finish last night? Would you call that a strong finish when you compare it to other debates that Joe Biden has been a part of? You think that's a strong finish? I don't think so. So someone had to lie. There had to be someone to run in and run cover for Joe Biden. Of course, Kamala Harris is going to do that. She's the vice president.
When I think about the significance of the substance of what is before us in November in 130 days, we are looking at a president in Joe Biden who has done historic work, whether it be on addressing the infrastructure issue in America. Donald Trump, remember, kept talking every week was going to be an infrastructure week. It never happened. It was Joe Biden that made it happen so that over $1 trillion is hitting the streets of America to upgrade roads and bridges. You look at what Joe Biden has been able to accomplish in terms of delivering for the American people, whether it be the creation of 15 million new jobs, over 800,000 manufacturing jobs, bringing manufacturing back to the United States, what we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month, finally taking on Big Pharma and allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. These are the substantive issues that the American people care about. And what we saw tonight is more of the same. Joe Biden fighting for the American people, Donald Trump fighting for himself.
I didn't see any of them fighting really for the American people. If that's what she considers to be a fight, again. But let's talk about the Kamala Harris thing for just a second, okay? Because you see, the Democratic Party messed up. Number one, it was very clear when you looked at the polls in the 2020 Democrat primary debates, it was very clear that Joe Biden was not really well liked. They pushed him through in South Carolina and everything changed after South Carolina. Let's not forget that. Let's not forget he didn't win Iowa. He didn't win New Hampshire. He didn't win Nevada. Let's not forget that, folks. But the donor class decided that that was their guy. And we know how this works when you follow the money and corruption. Once the donor class decides that that's who they want, that is who the candidate, the nominee is going to be. So here's where they messed up, folks. They didn't think about the fact that Joe Biden did not have a strong base. What he had was a lot of people that came out and voted against Donald Trump. So you now have a person in office that didn't have a strong base to begin with. He's there because people did not want the other guy. And over the years that he's been in office, he decided not to build that base. The economy's bad. He's gotten us involved in all these wars. What do you expect to happen? Then the person that he chose as his VP, Kamala Harris, her approval rating also sucks. Oh, and by the way, she's also horrible on foreign policy. So now the person that is next in line to take the presidency, Kamala Harris, is not someone that people want. So what do? So you can bring in someone else to replace Joe Biden? But now this is where the Democratic Party got in trouble. Because if you bring someone else in to take that spot from Kamala Harris, now the critique that you're going to get is that you brought in this person and you put them in front of a woman of color. And that's what they'll go with. That's what people will see. Believe it or not. People will say, how dare you? Gavin Newsom, we're going to get to him next. Gavin Newsom, that everybody said, put Gavin Newsom in. Imagine the outroar from people that you will hear if they bring in Gavin Newsom and put him in front of Kamala Harris. You don't think people are going to say, oh my God, they just passed over a woman of color. So the Democratic Party fucked up. If they would have just let things play out the way they should have and not go behind the scenes and call these candidates to drop out before Super Tuesday to help Joe Biden, and then leave people like Elizabeth Warren in, which Elizabeth Warren knew at that point she was not going to win. That race from day one was between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. And Bernie could have actually beaten Joe Biden. So Clyburn steps in South Carolina and changes all of that. So Democrats, this is karma. This is what happens when you allow big money, Wall Street, the donor class, you allow them to pick the politicians. The Republican Party does it too, but the difference is Republicans, for the most part, they'll get in line and back that candidate, whoever it is. There were people that I knew that were against Donald Trump when he was running in 2016, but once it was named that he was the nominee, they got in line with the party. And so this was another little sneaky thing they did last night. In comes Gavin Newsom. Now he just happens to be there. Not happens to be there. They told him to come there. Now, why would they do that? Listen to what Gavin Newsom had to say about Joe Biden's performance. See, this was them trying to be messy.
You were out there getting a chorus of questions about whether Biden should step down. There is panic that has set in. There is panic that has set in among people who have watched this debate, who are Democrats, people who are strategists, and some even inside Democratic campaigns. Yeah. Do you think it's unfounded?
Well, I think it's unhelpful, and I think it's unnecessary. We've got to go in and got to keep our heads high. And as I say, we've got to have the back of this president. You don't turn your back because of one performance. What kind of party does that? It's been a masterclass. 15.6 million jobs. That's 8 times more than the last 3 Republican presidents combined. The only thing the last 3 Republican presidents have in common is recessions. Democrats deliver. This president has delivered. We need to deliver for him at this moment. With all due respect, the more time we start having these conversations, go down these rabbit holes, it's unhelpful to our democracy, our fate and future of this country, the world. They need us right now to step up, and that's exactly what I intend to do.
You were out there.
So he's there because this is them sending another message. That's really who they want to be in that spot. They would rather have Gavin Newsom there than Joe Biden. That's really who they want. They've been hinting towards this for quite some time. Right? And Gavin Newsom has said multiple times, no, I'm not going to run. No, I'm not trying to replace Joe Biden. No, all that kind of stuff. But again, it sends a strong message when you bring on the person that a lot of people have said, please replace Gavin Newsom with Joe Biden. And by the way, if you live in California, you probably might disagree with that, because if you're talking about the economy, if you're upset with how the economy is, just look at how things are in California. One of my high school classmates moved to California, and she told me she wished she had the money to come back home. And she's a lawyer. That's how expensive California is. I'm a lawyer. Jill Stein issued a response after the debate. I want you to hear a little bit of what she said here.
CNN, and yes, I agree. Shame on CNN that we weren't allowed to be in this debate when they don't have to be, under the cover of darkness, when they're working legally, they're paying taxes, they're not being manipulated.
Oh, I'm sorry. That jumped forward somehow. I don't know what happened there. There we go.
American people, because we are the only national scope campaign that's actually on the ballot already for the majority of voters. So we actually qualified according to one of the major criteria. We qualify for being on the ballot for a majority of voters. And we should have been admitted on that account. But also because we are the one campaign that does not take corporate money. We don't take money from corporate PACs. We do not work with super PACs, which are extremely corrupting. We work with we play by the rules. We don't have, these special loopholes like the victory funds that Democrats and Republicans use. So a single donor can write a check for $600,000 and more, and then pull strings from the inside. So yes, shame on CNN for locking us out. And I would say also shame on CNN because they let both candidates make outrageous assertions. It's like there was no adult in the room there. No one was playing the role of a moderator or doing fact checking or holding anyone accountable for what they said. And, that's a real shame.
Yeah. And they, you know what, if they would have done that, then people would have seen that both Biden and Trump were telling lies. I think Trump told more lies, but yeah, the moderators didn't do any fact checking, and that was a problem. Think about what that debate would have been like last night if Jill Stein and RFK and Dr. West and Claudia De La Cruz, if all of them were also a part of that debate. Because I say this again, I don't care. Whoever you support, I'm not going to be there in the voting booth with you to help you vote. Okay, this is what it is. But I say this because at the end of the day, I really do think they could have taken them out in that debate. They really could have done that. But here we are. And we're here because CNN, they changed their rules. They made it so that none of the third party or independent candidates could be a part of that debate. They didn't want the American people to hear from them, because here's the thing. If more American people, all the people that watched that debate last night, if they would have heard from the other candidates, I bet you a good amount of them probably would have walked away from Biden and Trump. And that's not what they want, because that's not what the donor class wants. Here's something to say, folks. The reality is, at the end of the day, is this. They don't really want anyone in the White House that is not going to be beholden to the military industrial complex, Wall Street, and AIPAC. Because you're not just fighting capital and the military industrial complex. You also have to fight AIPAC. I think that's been made very apparent since October 7th. We've seen how AIPAC has been known to move people out because they won't get in line and be pro-Israel. The likelihood of having a candidate like that actually get into the White House, not alone being elected, but let's say they were elected. Do we think they would let them get into the White House? No, they would probably kill them, just like JFK. So for all the people that are willing to take that chance, when you're running third party or independent and you're calling out AIPAC, you're calling out Israel, you're calling out the military industrial complex, you're calling out Wall Street, because let's all remember, even Bernie didn't call out Israel. Let's all remember, fam. Do you think the powers that be are going to allow that person to be in the White House? They would try to kill them first. So when you choose to run in that position, you basically have to be not afraid to die. And some people are not. That's the problem that we have in this country. So when you look at some of these other groups, the CIA, the FBI, these government agencies, when you look at them and you look into them a little bit deeper, you'll understand who took out some of these people. Even when you look at organizing spaces, like they wouldn't even let Fred Hampton live. They wouldn't let Malcolm X live. They wouldn't let MLK live. Those people had to go, according to them. So the president of the United States is supposed to be the leader of the country. But as I've shown you before on that pyramid chart, that chart that talks about the different levels of corruption and who's really in charge around this piece, as I've showed you before, the president is a puppet. The banks are above the president. So are the corporations and the billionaires. We need a real change in this country, but it's not going to come easy. I want everyone to understand that. I think when you see real change happen in this country, it's going to be because at least 5% of the population has had enough and hits the streets, not just to protest over social issues, not just to protest over war, but to protest over all of it. And the money. It's going to be when people truly hit rock bottom and have had enough. And every revolution doesn't have to be bloody. Some are, though. But I think that's what it's going to take to change the system. Because if people like Jill Stein and RFK qualified technically to be a part of the debate, and CNN just goes, oh, we just changed the rules. If you have candidates that support the Palestinian cause and are not pro-Israel, and you got a PAC like AIPAC that just swoops in and says, okay, I'm going to put $20 million towards another candidate to get your ass out. So to truly change that system, it's going to be enough people in this country are going to have to say, I've had enough. And we could have had that. There was a point in time where I felt like we were heading in that way, you know, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. I think we're getting closer to it.